People think they know Jonathan Roumie, the man who plays Jesus, the faith, the grace, the millions of hearts he's touched through a screen. But there's one prayer, one moment of raw vulnerability on that stage that changed everything in the room. This is the conversation the cameras almost missed. The moment a grown woman, a professional host, couldn't hold back tears because of what he revealed. Stay till the end, because once you hear the prayer he's been whispering every single night for a woman he's never met, your idea of love, faith, and waiting will never be the same. She didn't expect it. Nobody in that audience expected it. The interview started like any other, polished, safe, the kind of conversation where everyone knows their lines. Jonathan sat across from her, calm, collected, answering questions about the chosen, about fame, about playing the most recognized figure in human history. He smiled at the right moments. He gave the answers people wanted to hear. But she noticed something the cameras didn't catch at first. Behind every answer, there was a hesitation, a flicker in his eyes, like he was guarding something too sacred to share with strangers. And then she asked him the question nobody else had the courage to ask. The question about loneliness, about going home alone after portraying the greatest love story ever told. And that's when everything shifted. His smile faded. His shoulders dropped. The room went silent, the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat feel too loud. And he said the words that broke her. I have a prayer, a specific prayer, for her, for the woman I've never met. The host's hands trembled. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. Because what he said next, the prayer he's prayed 1,000 nights in the dark, it wasn't just beautiful. It was the answer millions have been searching for. But I'm not telling you what he prayed yet. Because first, you need to understand why. Why he's waited. Why he's protected his heart. Why this prayer exists at all. The studio felt different that night. The lights were softer than usual, the audience quieter, like they knew something important was about to happen even before it did. The host sat across from Jonathan, her notes prepared, her questions rehearsed, but there was a nervousness in her hands she couldn't quite explain. She'd interviewed hundreds of people, celebrities, politicians, artists, but something about this felt heavier. Jonathan Roumie walked onto that stage the way he always does, humble, gracious, with that gentle presence that makes people feel safe. The audience erupted in applause, not because of fame, but because of what he represents. Hope, faith, a reminder that goodness still exists in a world that feels like it's falling apart. The first 20 minutes were easy. She asked him about the chosen, about what it's like to portray Jesus, about the weight of carrying a role that billions of people hold sacred. He answered beautifully, the way he always does, with thoughtfulness, with reverence, with just enough humor to keep things light. The audience laughed when he joked about the beard. They nodded when he talked about the responsibility. Everything was going exactly as planned. But she kept noticing something. Every time he finished an answer, there was a pause, a split second where his eyes would drift, like he was somewhere else, somewhere lonelier. She's a professional. She's trained to see what people hide. And Jonathan Roumie, the man who plays the embodiment of love, was hiding something. Not something dark, something vulnerable. She glanced down at her notes, then back at him, and made a decision to go off script, to ask the question that wasn't written down, the question about the man behind the role, about the human being who goes home after filming miracles and wakes up alone. She leaned forward slightly, her voice softer now, more personal. Can I ask you something more personal? The room shifted. The audience leaned in. Jonathan's posture changed, his hands clasped together, his breath just a little deeper. And in that moment she knew. She knew she was about to touch something he'd been protecting. Something sacred. Something that would break them both. The question hung in the air like a prayer waiting to be answered. You spend your days portraying the greatest love story ever told. She paused, her eyes searching his. Not with judgment, but with genuine care. What does that do to your heart when you go home alone? The audience went completely still. You could hear the sound of breathing, the faint hum of stage lights, the weight of a question nobody had ever dared to ask him publicly. Jonathan's face changed. Not dramatically, not obviously, but if you were watching closely, if you cared enough to see past the surface, you saw it. His smile faded slowly, like a sunset you don't notice until the light is gone. His eyes dropped to his hands. His chest rose and fell with a breath he'd been holding for what felt like years. The host didn't rush him. She didn't fill the silence with nervous laughter or backtrack to make it easier. She just waited, the way you wait for someone you love to find the courage to tell you the truth. When he finally looked up, his eyes were different, softer, more human, more breakable. He started, his voice quieter now, almost a whisper. That's the question I pray about every night. The room inhaled collectively, a shared breath of anticipation and ache. He nodded slowly, like he was giving himself permission to continue, to cross a line he'd never crossed in public before. I have a prayer, he said, and his voice cracked just slightly on the word prayer. A specific prayer. For her. For the woman I haven't met yet. The host's eyes immediately filled with tears. She tried to blink them away, tried to stay composed, but her hands came up to her mouth instinctively, the way people do when something hits them too deeply to control. The audience, rows of strangers who came expecting inspiration, were now witnessing something they hadn't prepared for. Vulnerability. Real, unscripted, sacred vulnerability. Jonathan continued, his words careful, measured, like he was handling something fragile. Every single night, before I pray for myself, before I pray for my career or my health or anything else, I pray for her, wherever she is, whoever she is. The tears the host had been fighting finally fell, silent and unbidden, trailing down her cheeks as she listened. But he didn't say the prayer. Not yet, because before you can understand what I pray, he said softly, you have to understand why I pray it, why I've chosen to wait, why I've protected this part of my heart when the world told me I was wasting time. He leaned back in his chair, eyes distant, like he was watching a movie of his own life play out in reverse. Hollywood isn't kind to people who wait, he began, his voice steady but heavy with years of experience. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I was young, hopeful, broke. I watched everyone around me find love in all the wrong places. Relationships that started fast and ended faster. Connections built on convenience, not commitment. And the pressure to just find someone, anyone. So you're not alone in this brutal industry. It was suffocating. The host nodded, her tears still wet on her face, listening like every word mattered because it did. I made a decision back then, Jonathan continued. A decision that cost me more than I understood at the time. I chose to wait, not because I thought I was better than anyone else, not because I'm some perfect person, but because I was terrified. Terrified of settling, terrified of choosing someone out of loneliness instead of love, terrified of waking up next to someone and realizing I'd compromised the most sacred thing I'd ever be trusted with. Another human heart. His voice grew quieter, more personal, like he was confessing something he'd never said out loud. So I waited. And I'm still waiting. The years passed. Friends got married, started families, built lives, and I celebrated with them, genuinely. But then I'd go home, to an empty apartment, to silence, to questions from family who meant well but didn't understand. When are you going to settle down, Jonathan? You're not getting any younger. Don't you want kids? Don't you want someone? He paused. The kind of pause that holds decades of loneliness. And the answer was always yes. Of course I want someone. Of course I think about her. Of course there are nights when the waiting feels impossible, when I wonder if I've made a terrible mistake, if I've been too careful, too cautious, too committed to a standard that doesn't exist anymore. But then he straightened up, his eyes finding the host's, finding strength in the honesty. But then there's the other part, the part where I play Jesus, where I spend my days portraying perfect love, sacrificial love, the kind of love that sees people fully and chooses them anyway. And then I go home, and I'm just a man who wants what everyone wants, to be known, to be chosen, to be loved. The irony wasn't lost on him, and it wasn't lost on the audience either. I portray the greatest love story, he said softly, while privately praying for my own. And somewhere in that tension, in that ache, I started the prayer, because I needed something to hold on to, something that made the waiting feel less like punishment and more like preparation. I needed a way to love her before I even knew her name. The host wiped her eyes again, her voice barely above a whisper. Every night, every single night, he confirmed. For years now, it's become the most important conversation I have with God. Not about my career, not about success, about her, about becoming the man she deserves, about asking God to protect her heart wherever she is right now, to guard her, to prepare her, to help her know she's already loved even if we haven't met. His voice trembled slightly, because that's what real love does. It starts before the meeting. It begins in the waiting. It's built in the prayers nobody hears and the discipline nobody sees. He took a deep breath. The kind of breath you take before you jump off something high, before you say the thing you've kept hidden, before you make yourself completely vulnerable in front of strangers. The host leaned forward, her whole body attuned to this moment, knowing something sacred was about to be shared. "Can I?" she asked gently, voice still thick with emotion. "Can I ask what you pray?" Jonathan looked at her, then at the audience, then down at his hands. For a long moment, nobody moved. The silence wasn't awkward. It was holy. The kind of silence that exists in churches and hospital rooms and moments too important to rush. And then he spoke. "Father," he began, his voice soft but clear, "wherever she is right now, protect her. Guard her heart from the wrong people, from the relationships that would diminish her, from the loneliness that makes us settle for less than your best. Let her know, even in the waiting, that she's already loved, that someone is praying for her before he even knows her name." He paused, swallowing hard, his emotions rising to the surface. "Prepare her heart the way you're preparing mine. Strengthen her in the areas where I'll need her strength. Refine her in the fire of this waiting season, so that when we finally meet, we're not two broken people looking for someone to fix us, but two whole people ready to build something sacred together." The host's shoulders shook slightly, tears falling freely now, no attempt to hide them. "And Father," Jonathan continued, his voice breaking just a little, "prepare me. Show me the areas where I'm not ready, the selfishness I haven't surrendered, the fears I'm still holding, the ways I need to grow before I can love her the way she deserves. Don't let me waste this waiting. Let it transform me. Make me into the man who can honor her, protect her, serve her, cherish her the way Christ loved the church." He took another breath, steadying himself for the final part. "And if," his voice dropped to almost a whisper, "if it's your will that she never comes, if I'm meant to serve you alone for the rest of my life, then give me the grace to do that fully, joyfully, without bitterness. Because this isn't about my timeline. It's about your purpose. But until then, I'll keep praying for her. I'll keep becoming someone worthy of the gift she'll be." The room erupted, not with applause, but with the sound of breath releasing, of tears falling, of hearts breaking open. Women in the audience covered their faces, shoulders shaking with sobs. Men sat stunned, confronted with a standard of love they'd never considered. And the host, she couldn't speak. She tried twice, her mouth opening, but no words came. Only tears. Only the physical manifestation of what happens when you witness love in its purest, most sacrificial form. It took her nearly 30 seconds to find her voice. 30 seconds of silence on live television that felt like an eternity, and yet nobody minded because everyone needed that time to breathe, to process, to let the weight of what they'd just heard settle into their souls. When she finally spoke, her voice was raw, stripped of all professional polish. "Do you?" she started, then stopped, wiping her eyes with trembling hands. "Do you know how many women are praying that same prayer right now? Praying that somewhere, somehow, there's a man doing exactly what you're doing?" Jonathan looked at her with gentle understanding, but she wasn't finished. "I've interviewed hundreds of people," she continued, her words rushing out now like a dam breaking. "I've heard love stories and heartbreak stories and everything in between. But I have never," she emphasized, shaking her head, "never heard a man speak about his future wife like she's already sacred to him, like she's already worth protecting even though he doesn't know her name." The audience murmured in agreement, women nodding, tears streaming down faces of people who came expecting inspiration but found something deeper, something that touched the loneliest parts of them. "What you just revealed," the host said, her voice stronger now, isn't just about you and her. It's about what real love actually looks like. Most people date to find love, to test it, to see if it works. But you, she gestured toward him. You're already loving her. Before the first conversation, before the first date, before you even know what she looks like, you're honoring her in the waiting. And that, she paused, letting the words land with their full weight. That's what every woman has been praying someone would do. You just proved that the kind of man we've been told doesn't exist anymore, he does. He's real. He's sitting right here. The audience rose to their feet, applause thundering through the studio, not for celebrity, but for hope restored. What Jonathan Roumie revealed that day wasn't just a prayer. It was a roadmap for everyone who's been told that waiting is foolish, that standards are outdated, that real love doesn't require sacrifice anymore. He proved something the world desperately needed to hear. Faith over fear, patience over desperation, devotion before destination. Maybe you're watching this right now, and you're in that waiting season. Maybe you're wondering if anyone out there is doing it the right way. If anyone is praying for you the way Jonathan prays for her. Here's the truth his story reveals. Someone is. And more importantly, God is preparing both of you simultaneously, refining you in the fire of waiting, so that when you finally meet, you're ready. Not perfect, but ready. While you wait, do what Jonathan does. Become the person you're praying for. Pray the kind of prayer that honors them before you know them. Protect your heart not out of fear, but out of faith that what God has for you is worth the discipline of waiting. And to the woman who will one day be Jonathan Roumie's wife, if you ever see this, know that he's been loving you long before he meets you. He's been praying for your protection, your heart, your preparation. He's been waiting the right way. If this story touched you, if it gave you hope when you needed it most, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. Someone in your life needs to hear that waiting isn't wasted time. It's preparation time. Remember, one prayer prayed faithfully every single night can change 2 lives before they even meet. That's not just romance. That's faith in action.